Our meeting. Thank you everyone for coming, and just to remind everyone that we are live streaming this meeting via the City of Hobart's YouTube channel, and just to remind everyone to be respectful of and considerate towards other people who are attending the meeting. Language and conduct at the meeting that could be perceived as offensive, defamatory or threatening to a person attending the meeting is not acceptable. I note that all elected members are present except an apology from Deputy Lord Mayor Councillor Sherlock. Starting with an acknowledgement to country, I would like to, in recognition of the history and culture of this place, acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which the City of Hobart was built, and recognise the continuing value of Aboriginal elders and knowledge holders. People like Jim Everett, who last week was talking in the media about Macquarie Point, Muwinina land, and I think a few people were questioning the idea that Macquarie Point is actually an important place for Aboriginal people, but I thought it was interesting for me to learn a bit about the Muwinina people and how the original shoreline went right along that the northwestern side of Macquarie Point, which obviously a lot of it is now reclaimed land, but the original shoreline was where the freshwater and the saltwater met, because it was where the rivulet came out and the saltwater of the original shoreline met the fresh and the saltwater. There was an area of shallow mudflats. It was a very fertile area, and it was the understanding is that it was a very fertile and important gathering and living place for the Muwinina before the arrival of the Europeans, and well before the land was reclaimed. So I thought that's an example of the important role that Palawa elders continue to play in our community. Thank you. Confirmation of the minutes from our last meeting, which was held on the 27th of October, moved by Councillor Lohberger, seconded by Councillor Kitsos. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those say no. It's carried unanimously. Item 3 is transfer of agenda items. Are there any items proposed that anyone would like to transfer anywhere? There being none, we'll move on to communications from the Chair. I don't have any. Item 5 is notification of council workshops, and just note that there have been 2 workshops, one on the 10th of November, which is the Hobart Workshop Committee, covered a lot of topics, including the Bloomberg Philanthropy City Leadership Program, the Macquarie Point Stadium Precinct Order, and the Economic Development Delivery Framework. And then on the 17th of November, we were in the community out in Sandy Bay at the Sandy Bay Bowls Club, and we had briefings from the community, also from deputations from the community, presentation from University of Tasmania, and other presentations on bushfire preparedness, housing action plan, and the draft of the inner city housing supply incentive policy, which will come to a meeting in the near future. Item 6 is public question time, and we have had notice of one public question from Mr. Chris Merridew. So, Mr. Merridew, it's your chance now to come forward and ask your questions.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. When I advised the General Manager, I said actually I did have 2 questions. One of them is fairly short, relates to the matter that was raised by your officer to do with fire awareness in Greater Hobart, and I commend her on her excellent report. But one thing in her report, she made not great, but substantial visual impression of people raking up the excess growth on, I think, possibly the domain, and burning it away. Unfortunately, residents don't have that. We did have a green collection, I think, in November and again at the beginning of autumn, part of what the council provided to the ratepayers. That has ceased, but my question is, can the council at this late stage, sort of a month ago into Christmas, that they consider reinstating that green collection in line with the yellow bin, in line with the green bin collection, and also offer green waste free to Macrobies Gully. Now, I realise that's a loss of revenue, but it was always a benefit that ratepayers had. And I understand the council gets revenue from reprocessing that. My question of you is whether this council tonight or the General Manager has the authority to investigate and possibly implement that before the forthcoming fire season.
Thank you,
I speak with
Mr.
experience of the fire season when my family's home was virtually almost burnt in Greenways Avenue, which is half a block above Regent Street. It is an issue. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll just pass that on to the CEO to see how he wants to deal with that one.
Thanks, Lord Mayor. So we have and will investigate that. Obviously, you wrote to us a couple of days ago, and so we will take that on and then come back to you once we've had sufficient time to be able to work through all of the considerations that we need to take with that. But we do thank you for the suggestion.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Thank you, General Manager. My second question is, Lord Mayor, you wrote recently about subsidising developments of houses to possibly try and get more houses built in the city. I have asked on 2 occasions prior to this that for council to consider a rate remission on the properties rented when that rental agreement is subsidised by the federal government's rental support. Now, I know that there are some 6,000 odd houses that are rentals in Hobart, but I'm sure all of them do not get rental support. And it's only those that I'm aiming that the council consider a waiver of half of the rates, possibly somewhere between $35 and $50 a week, which is a direct benefit to the renter. The landlord, I see in today's paper we have virtually the highest rentals at $520 a week, or very close to those. The landlord is paying somewhere like $120 a week in rates and land tax, which is no benefit to the tenant or to the landlord. You can't do anything about rates, land tax, but you might like to consider, as you're looking to subsidise housing, that you look to do this for renters, and that can apply virtually immediately, not waiting for 2 years for a house to be built. Thank you.
Time. Thanks, Mr. Merridew. The CEO, given the complexity of your question that has come in today, that'll be taken on notice, and you'll be provided with a written response, which will also be attached to the next meeting agenda. Thank you. Are there any other public questions? Would you like to come forward to the microphone and just introduce yourself, please? And then you've got 1 minute to ask your question.
My name's Chris Scanlon and I live at number 10 Ratho Street. I was here on the 28th of July with a problem that hasn't been, there's been no remediation or no recommendations. This started on the 24th of September when we had problems with water, polluted water flowing past my home. We have worked with Taswater, we have tried to work with our neighbours, Mr and Mrs Jeffries. We are told that there's fluoride in the water. We've told by Hobart Council that there is no ammonia in the water. And we've been told on the 25th of November 24 by Jacob Seisel that we must accept it and manage it the best we can. So therefore I'm being told I should accept pollution along the front of my home. On the 24th of November 2024, my husband emailed Jacob Seisel, could you forward me copies of all tests and results of analysis of the water carried out by Hobart City Council? It Okay, we have not received anything. 27th of November, there's no analysis report undertaken. We only took an ammonia report on site. Unfortunately, we do not have a copy of the test. We usually take a photo of the result, but it cannot be found. That's the report taking of Hobart City Council. 19th of December 2024. There are a lot of sites around Hobart where there are constant flows from curb connections. Then he mentions the Urban Drainage Act of 2013.
Thank you. Would you just mind, your minute of preamble is up. Would you mind just getting to your exact question?
I've had a meeting with Mr. Stretton, and my question now is, I've been fobbed off to Fiona Cleary, who's sent me 3 emails telling me, oh, we're going to get you information next week, the following week and the following week. Okay, today, the 24th of November, I still have no answers to the question asked. When will Hobart City Council remedy the pollution outside my property?
I'll just ask CEO Mr. Stretton to respond to your query.
Thanks, Lord Mayor. Just to start, Fiona Cleary is my assistant, so you haven't been fobbed off. We've been actually working on the advice, and I obviously personally have been investigating means by which we can address the problems at the front of your property, which I have personally been out and viewed. It's not a straightforward proposition, and has necessitated a lot of investigation and a lot of questioning. So I am in the process of finalising some advice to you. It's needed to get more technical advice around it, but again, because of its complexity is why it's taken the time to be able to resolve it. But having said that, I have looked at every which way possible to be able to resolve it.
So how much longer do I have to wait, Mr. Stretton? Sorry.
I think that's been answered. Thank you.
No, it hasn't. The question hasn't been answered. He said he will get back to me, but not when. And how long do I have to wait?
I think that's as much as specific as we can give you an answer tonight, because sometimes it's more complex to be able to get back to you with it, to be able to say on this particular day. So it's better that you've raised it and he's made a commitment to get back to you as soon as possible.
Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Are there any other public questions? Yes, come forward, please. Introduce yourself and ask your question.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Ed Swan, Co-President of South Hobart Football Club. Councillors would be aware of the recent successful hosting of 3 Australian Championship home games at the home of South Hobart Football Club and the only national standard soccer ground in the Hobart municipality, the Darcy Street South Hobart Oval. Each game was attended by over 1,500 people, including many families and young children. We thank the Council for its ongoing support of these important community events. However, community recreation users continue to be subject to the negative impact that exists because of the current stance of Council to use this sporting facility as a fenced-off lead dog park. Late last month, there was a dog attack on a young woman exercising on the oval. The dog owner has not reported the attack as required under the Dog Control Act. It is understood that Council has CCTV of the attack. My first question is, what action is the Council undertaking to ensure that this dog, which now has attacked a person, is not continuing to use the ground with the potential to cause harm to legitimate recreational users? In addition, noting that protection of harm to the public is the highest priority under the Council's Compliance Investigations Procedure Policy, do councillors believe that residents should be warned of the potential for future dog attacks? Secondly, it appears that council officers have determined, in conjunction with insurers, that the risk of dog attack is an acceptable risk that sport and rec users of the oval must accept. In this case, it was a bite injury on a thigh of a grown adult. Are elected members happy to accept this risk position of your officials for these highly foreseeable events, and which you will still hold? And will you still hold this position if the attack were to happen to a young child?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Given the complexity of your questions, we'll take that on notice, and it will probably be responded to by the CEO rather than all the elected members, because it might be a bit tricky but elected members are welcome to respond to you directly, but I'll get the CEO to add anything.
Look, I believe the matter has been reported to Council, and if they haven't received advice, it shouldn't be far away, because I have seen a draft. So yeah, I'll need to follow it up.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Thank you.
Right, so I think that's been responded to. Items, and if there's any other public questions, there being none, we will move on to 6.2, which is the responses to the public questions that were taken on notice at our last meeting. They are attached to the agenda. Would someone like to move? Moved by Councillor Posselt, seconded by, I need another seconder. Thanks, Councillor Harvey. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Again, say no. Carried unanimously. Item 7 is supplementary items. There are none. Item 8 is indications of conflicts of interest. Are there any items that anyone would like to indicate?
Yes, Lord Mayor. Item 19. 19.
19. So 19 for Councillor Elliott. Any others? There being none, we will move on to item 9, which is petitions. There are no petitions I received, no. Item 10 is an officer report, which is about Cornelian Bay water quality. There is a two-part recommendation moved by Councillor Posselt. Someone else like to move, second that? Second by Councillor Lohberger. Is there any discussion on this item? Alderman Zuko.
Yeah, look, Lord Mayor, my memory is right. When this came up, I actually made a point in regards to, I did, thank you, the reinstatement of the sand. I have got the documentation somewhere in my files somewhere, because it was a long time ago, whereby during the war, sand was taken by the federal government to use for the war. And, you know, they've taken it away. Surely it can be reinstated, irrespective of how long ago it was. And yes, it was used for purposes to defend this country. But I'd like to, if you don't mind, Lord Mayor, because there's nothing in here at point 3 that we write to the federal government in regard. No?
We did.
Oh, sorry, Anne.
Send us a jar of sand. Yeah.
We did write to them, Alderman Zuko, before the election. I don't know whether they've responded, but I'll have to check that. We definitely wrote to them, and it would have been distributed.
Okay, well, I can't remember receiving it anyway, Lord Mayor. Well, I'll just leave it as a thing. Can we just get that information?
Yeah.
Well, what response we got, what the current status is, because if they're flogging us off, I think we need to do something about it. Okay, thank you.
Further discussion? Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I have put forward an amendment to this motion, which put up on the screen there.
So would someone like to second Councillor Kelly's motion? Councillor Elliott? Okay, would you like to speak to the motion now?
Yeah, thank you, Lord Mayor.
Oh, sorry, speak to the motion to amend. Thank you.
Cornelian Bay, growing up as a young lad in the 60s, it was a very popular space for exactly what this, where we're going with this proposal, which is a great idea and something that, you know, I applaud Council for having a look at. It was like a mini Bondi Beach. I remember it well. There was cars parked along the beach there, a lot of people on the sand and doing all the things that your typical Australian coastal beach area would be. It was the closest place for me, living near Newtown, the closest beach for me to go. So I spent a lot of summers there, between there and the Olympic pool. However, a lot's happened since the 60s, and since then there's been heavy metal contamination from the zinc works, the Boyer paper mill, the many industries in Prince of Wales Bays, incidents of raw sewage spillages, and more recently in 2024, an illegal sugary water discharge from Cadbury's. So the legacy of this contamination includes heavy metals, including, but not restricted to, zinc, mercury, cadmium, lead, and also the stormwater runoff from the streets of Newtown. So we've got this toxic soup of highly toxic chemicals and contaminants that have entered onto the beach area of Cornelian Bay. And over the years, these contaminants have built up a very thick layer of toxic sludge, and that now sits under a layer of sand. Now, whilst the water quality is an important issue, of course, we can sample that out of boats, and we can even probably eat the fish if we're told it's okay to. No, I wouldn't. But it's only telling half the story here. And if you go down to Cornelian Bay now, apart from the top metre of sand, the rest of that sand is black, or it's a very inky graphite colour. And it's probably one of the last places I would want to take my grandchildren or children or be involved with myself is you look at the water, it looks nice, get there running over to the beach all excited, and bang, you've got this black sand that goes down. I've measured it, it goes down quite some distance. And I'm told too that the proponent of the floating hotel that was going to be in further downstream there near the domain there, that beneath this crust of sand there is an absolute build-up of toxic sludge. And I just think, whilst I'm fully supporting that, we explore the options of Cornelian Bay as a bathing area for all the good folk, but I think we're missing half the equation here. The water quality is only half, and surely during this study period we should look at everything possible, because we don't be all dressed up to go and then be absolutely poleaxed with complaints about the quality of the sand, and then reports that have already been done, by the way, for other things along the Sturgeon River of this toxic sludge lurking beneath a thin layer of sand. So it's quite a simple amendment, and that's to say that, look, let's consider this, that the sand quality and the possibility of any contaminants under that sand be thoroughly examined. And that way we can have a very good comprehensive report, and in an abundance of safety we can keep proceeding ahead with the good work that hopefully this report will be able to bring forward. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Kelly. Councillor Posselt.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Just start with a question, if I may. I believe in the report and the reports that we've received to date, including the response to the original notice of motion, that sediment has been discussed in those reports. Is that correct?
CEO.
Thanks, Lord Mayor. It has been discussed, but the amendment is pretty consistent with, section 6.4.1 in the report, which we said that if the council wishes to pursue more active management of the sediment in the area, external expert consultants will be required to provide the testing and advice, as this narrow expertise is outside the range of council staff, and that's fine, and the cost will not be significant for us to be able to do that. So the motion basically, or the amendment rather, really just enacts that suggestion that staff have included in the report, and for the completeness of the report it would be fine to be able to incorporate that into the final work that we do.
Thank you, CEO. Thank you, Lord Mayor. I guess in concert with Alderman Zuko's comments, I will support the amendment from Councillor Kelly. The intent was always to try and return as best we could swimming to Cornelian Bay from the beach, and I think there is an argument, given that it was the sand was pulled off for the war effort by the federal government. The federal government could potentially fund the rehabilitation back to that. It is just a little bit of testing. I actually think we pretty well understand how much, and it's in the report. I think it's about 200 mils of clean sand that is generated further upstream in the Derwent and is deposited, and has been deposited on top of the contaminated sediment. It's my best understanding, recognising I'm not an expert in this space, that contaminated sediments are generally best capped or left alone as opposed to removed. It would certainly disturb a lot of the quite stable sediment if it was attempted to rehabilitate by digging it out, and I don't think, or dredging, and I don't think that that's actually a feasible option here. I would also recognise that under the Primary Contact Recreational Swimming definition in the Public Health Act, that sediment is not relevant. It's more about E. coli levels within the system. So it may be a step beyond what we've already sort of set out to do, which is to reach that standard under the Public Health Act. And that's not a bad thing, which is why I will support the amendment for that, just, I guess, hesitantly and cautiously, because I'm not sure what the future might look like, whether it's really significant expenditure and what we might find that's unexpected cost to actually reach the goals of the original motion. But thank you, Councillor Kelly, for bringing on something in good faith for a better community and to return swimming again to Cornelian Bay.
Councillor Lohberger.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Kelly, for bringing this amendment. He seems to have read my mind there. I too would probably not swim in this water, although I am very supportive of efforts to clean it up to a better standard. I just wanted to rise to talk about this work we're going to do. And the first thing I wanted to do was just ask for some clarity on part 3.9 of the report.
Sorry, Councillor Lohberger, we're just going to focus on the amendment for now, and we'll come back to the substantive. Were you going to talk on the amendment?
Yeah. Part 3.9 relates specifically to heavy metals. Wanted some clarity on what that sentence means, that heavy metals at sites outside the stormwater sites met or exceeded all ANZAC trigger values. What does that actually mean?
Is someone able to answer that?
So the ANZAC are a national guideline that set threshold levels for not only bacteria but also metals or other substances within water quality. So they set limits in respect of. So what they're saying is that what they found was that the heavy metals are in excess of the trigger values. So basically the level that ANZAC guidelines set for recreational waters.
Thank you, Lord Mayor and CEO. I was just checking that we had actually gone over them. It was just a little bit hard to tell. I guess the reason I'm speaking is really to talk about this testing that we've just discussed as part of this amendment. And just to ask that, can we see some testing when there are actually people waiting around out there stirring up the sand, and quite a few of them? I mean, if we want to have people swimming on this beach, we really need to replicate what's going to happen, which is a crowd of people are going to try and wade out there through this sand, and there's a lot of potential, I think, for them to stir up sediment. I think just testing the water here and there, it's not really getting at what we're trying to look for here. So I just would ask that there's some effort made to try and replicate, say, a group of people out there swimming and wading around, because that's actually the reason we're doing this particular testing, I believe. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Further discussion? No further discussion. I'll put the amendment. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against say no. Carried unanimously. Go back to the substantive motion as amended. Any discussion? No discussion. I'll put that. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against say no. Carried unanimously. Item 11. Which is the unsolicited proposals policy. Would someone like to move the recommendation? Councillor Posselt, seconded by Councillor Kitsos. Is there any discussion? No discussion. I'll put that. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against say no. Carried unanimously. Item 12 is the MOU Macquarie Point Precinct Order. Moved by Councillor Lohberger, seconded by Councillor Posselt. Discussion? Discussion on this? Councillor Kitsos.
Question, if I may. Can we have some clarification on why this is being discussed prior to the order not being debated in the Legislative Council?
CEO.
Thanks, Lord Mayor. So the council officers have been negotiating around the around the order for quite some time. And it's just been completed, and in the usual course is to bring it to council for you to be able to consider, or in this case note. There's no particular reason other than the fact that it was ready to be able to present to council. So,
any further discussion? No?
Oh, look, I mean, I think that the timing of this is, although I understand the response from the CEO and that the organisation has been negotiating the MOU for some time, I find from a state government perspective it a little bit unfair that they're asking us to endorse something that hasn't yet passed the upper house of the parliament and may indeed not pass the upper house. So, you know, I've got that frame of reference, but I also have some questions around this which I did bring to workshop, because it seems like Hobart City Council is really bearing the brunt of this state government decision, and although I understand that a lot of the enforcement action will be delegated back to state government, we remain the planning authority in this instance, and I think it's a reputational risk for us moving forward to be agreeing to this MOU, not only with the timing of it, as I just explained, but also without getting further legal advice, because I think the public are going to feel quite confused as to what is in the council's jurisdiction, what is in the state government's jurisdiction, what happens when a neighbour complains about noise during a game, whose responsibility was it to action that, will there be a shared understanding between the two organisations of how we will communicate with the public around this. So I'm talking less about how the process is dealt with from a compliance aspect, but more about how we explain our roles. And I think that's really important to our ratepayers, given that this project is being forced upon the City of Hobart and indeed our ratepayers when it is for the entire state. So I still have some quite considerable questions around this MOU, and given that it hasn't passed the upper house, I'd like to move that we actually defer this to get some legal advice and bring this back if it does pass the upper house in the future.
That's a procedural motion. Was there a seconder for that? Councillor Harvey, as a procedural motion for deferral, I'll move straight to that. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Again say no.
No.
Show of hands, all those in favour?
Favour, Councillor Dutta, Councillor Passelt, Councillor Kitsos, Councillor Lohberger, Councillor Harvey and the Mayor.
And against?
Against, Alderman Zuko, Councillor Elliott, Councillor Coates, Alderman Bloomfield, Councillor Kelly.
So that's passed. So that's deferred to a workshop after the Legislative Council have considered the matter. Okay, item 13 is a proposed lease renewal at 20 Creek Road, Lena Valley. Moved by Councillor Harvey, seconded by Councillor Lohberger. Any discussion?
I just had a quick question, Lord Mayor. Just about the rental amount. The report's not quite clear about whether the $23,000 previously paid by Langford was a per annum amount or whether it covered the entire 3 years as a whole, the whole amount.
Am I able to answer that question?
I think Director Reynolds is pointing at me. My understanding is that's the annual figure.
Right. Thank you. That's all, Lord Mayor.
Any further discussion? I'll put that. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no. That's carried unanimously. Item 14 is the Cultural Park and North Hobart Skate Park Crown lease renewal. Moved by Councillor Posselt, seconded by Councillor Lohberger. Any discussion on this Crown lease? There's being none, I'll put that. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no. Is that everyone? No. Carried unanimously. Item 15 is the Conflict of Interest Advisory Panel, which is a response to a notice of motion. Would someone like to move this? Anyone want to move this item? Thanks, Councillor Harvey. Anyone would like to second it? Councillor Posselt. Any discussion? No discussion. I'll put that. All those in favour say aye. Against say no. Carried unanimously. Item 16 is the price and Taswater price and service plan number 5 and a letter of support request. Would anyone like to move this? Moved by Councillor Kitsos, seconded by Councillor Lohberger. Any discussion about the letter of support? Councillor Posselt.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'll be really brief. I just think that there's some lessons to be learned, and I know that this is happening across the country with underground infrastructure. Some of the proposals contained within this letter are in response to essentially underinvestment in infrastructure over decades, and it's just a bit of a trap for all governments at all levels and entities that underground infrastructure and supporting infrastructure needs investment, needs support, even though we don't get much bang for our buck in terms of what people see. We don't get better footpaths, we don't get amazing parklands and gardens, but it's just that I just think there's really important to rise to my feet and just say we have to make sure that we don't set in everything that we do, that we don't set ourselves up and our ratepayers up for in 30 or 40 or 50 years' time a big bill because we haven't really managed what we need to manage now. So I think there is a lesson that we can take from this, but I'll be happy to support this and a couple of the pricing structure changes that look a little bit better in terms of water usage. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Any further discussion? There being none, I'll put... Oh, Councillor Kelly, yes.
Look, I think we've got to be very careful here. The general perception of the public, they have no idea that Taswater is owned by the council. And, you know, if we're putting a hand up to say we support this, whilst the intentions may be honourable, you know, I just think it's not a good thing in so much as that, you know, Taswater are copping a lot of flack lately. There's been, as mentioned previously, it's been underinvestment, and whilst councils might own a portion of the Taswater infrastructure, you know, I just think we're going beyond what the role of this council is, as far as we've got enough problem putting out bushfires with our costs and expenditure and looking at why things are working and not, and justifying blowouts and all that sort of thing. And to go down the road of what Taswater are doing now, and this, by the way, this opinion will sort of be tagged to us for quite some time. It's not just going to disappear at tonight's meeting for stuff that's happened up until now. So I just think this whole unholy alliance is a very dangerous and rocky road that we're going down. Taswater are big boys. They can manage their business and, you know, put forward the reasons for underperformance or whatever it is, or even overperformance. That's fine. Let them take the accolades as well if they're running their business well. But I just don't think this is on, you know, in the charter of duties and responsibilities and justifications that we have as a council. So I cannot support this motion tonight, Lord Mayor. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Councillor Dutta.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Just a question. Is this the usual or normal practice that we support a letter with regards to what they're requesting?
It's purely the discretion of the council as to whether you support a letter. So we've been requested by Taswater to consider providing a letter of support for the plan that they've developed. Again, staff are recommending that occur, but it's obviously at the council's discretion as to whether they wish to offer their support or otherwise.
Yeah, my question is not that. My question is, has there been a past practice where we have supplied such support? That's what I'm asking.
I'm not sure the CEO would know about Taswater, but...
So we've had a vote, obviously, as part of the owner representatives in the past. We've been an owner representative along with all 29 councils and the state government for quite a significant period of time. So we've always had that role in this. Whether we've been requested and provided a letter for the previous PSP, I couldn't tell you that. We can find out. But again, I've just been responding to the request that was made for this particular plan.
So Lord Mayor, it's a request to provide a letter that we haven't written yet, so I think I read that it will come back to us. Is that the case?
No.
No, you'll write the letter? Or has the letter been written?
We have signed off on support for the actual position, though. Is that the case?
So if the council were to support the report tonight, then I would draft a correspondence consistent with the details in the report. That hasn't been drafted at this point because council hasn't made a decision.
Okay, but I think I'm just scrolling furiously here to find the council. Okay, the council provide a letter in support of Taswater and Service Plan 5. Subject to council endorsement, the CEO be delegated authority to provide the letter. Okay, so I read that in the wrong context. Right. Yep. Rather than write it and send it back to us, we write it and get on with it. Yep.
Councillor Posselt.
Just a question, Lord Mayor. How much percentage ownership? I know the councils own some of Taswater. Do we have a specific stake with which Hobart City Council owns Taswater?
Right.
We'd have to check. Do we know?
Yeah, it's in there somewhere. Yep.
We're just finding that information now.
It's somewhere in the order of the high 20s, 28-ish%, I think, thereabouts, I think, but...
So through you, Lord Mayor, it's actually 9.35%.
Councillor Posselt. No.
Right, all good.
Councillor Coates.
Look, very quickly, on two things. One is, just because it's come up in debate, I guess the principle of councils writing letters of support. I think there are organisations that, for various reasons, will approach council as a stakeholder and as a public entity with a known and trusted, although somewhat maligned brand, to write letters of support. I don't have an issue with that. I remember when Air New Zealand was seeking a co-chair agreement and City of Hobart wrote a letter of support. You know, I think there's times and places where we do these things. I won't dwell on the quantum of monies involved, other than to say that moving towards variable user charges is probably a good thing. So overall, I'm not too concerned about the structure, but inevitably these pricing changes do impact some more than others. There's a reason they're seeking to have a good community understanding and also seeking organisations like City of Hobart to sort of get behind them. But I think what they've done in the PSP5 in a broader sense does make sense, and long term it is a structural reform to their pricing model. Questions about value for money and Taswater delivering effectively are something that we can prosecute as an owner of that organisation and ensure that Taswater ultimately, as a custodian of Tasmanians' resourcing funding, act appropriately with that and don't waste that precious resource. But from an advocacy point of view, doing a change to a pricing structure is a big change. The variable change percentage hopefully will drive the added social benefit around people being aware of their usage. And so I think it's appropriate that we get behind that model, albeit, and I have no doubt that our Taswater representative does a very good job of this, but there is a role for us to play in ensuring that Taswater as an organisation have robust governance, don't misallocate resources, use both their revenue but also their expenditure in an appropriately wise manner. And look, I think this is an action we should take.
Any further discussion? I'll put that. All those in favour say aye. Against say no. Carried No.
One against.
All those, you need to speak up. All those in favour, put your hands up.
Alderman Zuko, Councillor Dutta, Councillor Elliott, is your hands down. Councillor Coates, Councillor Posselt, Councillor Kitsos, Councillor Lohberger, Alderman Bloomfield, Councillor Harvey and the Mayor.
And against?
Councillor Elliott and Councillor Kelly.
Okay, that's carried. So we'll now move on to item 17, which is the 24-25 financial statements. Someone like to move those? Financial statements certified for the end of June 2025. Moved by Councillor Harvey, seconded by Councillor Alderman Bloomfield. Any discussion? No discussion. I'll put that. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no. Carried unanimously. Item 18 is the Capital Works Program as at September 30, 2025. Would anyone like to move that? Alderman Bloomfield, seconded by Councillor Lohberger. Any discussion? No discussion? I'll put that. All those in favour say aye. Against say no. Show of hands. All those in favour.
Favour, Councillor Dutta, Councillor Elliott, Councillor Coates, Councillor Purcell, Councillor Kitsos, Councillor Lohberger, Alderman Bloomfield, Councillor Kelly, Councillor Harvey and the Mayor.
Against?
Alderman Zuko.
Okay, that's carried. We'll move on to item 19. Councillor Elliott has declared an interest in leaving the room. Would someone like to move item 19? Councillor Coates, seconded by Councillor Lohberger. Any discussion? Councillor Dutta.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I am compelled to make a statement and respond to this. Because I've been publicly castigated, I've been strongly criticized and condemned by a number of people for bringing the Code of Conduct action against my fellow councillor. In addition, I was personally thanked just a few minutes ago before coming to council meeting by the respondent for bringing the action against her. I don't enter into communications with regards to such matters, but this afternoon I'm compelled to respond. I acknowledge the decision of the Code of Conduct panel and respect the independence of the determination. While I may not agree with all the aspects of their findings, and I disagree with some of that, I accept the ruling as a fair and impartial assessment of the matter. I also acknowledge the Council's right to appeal this decision and to seek crowdfunding support for legal costs. I respect the principle of natural justice and the right of any individual to seek review of a decision they disagree with. And in this matter, I respect Councillor Elliott's position and her right to appeal this. As a councillor, I have a duty to uphold the highest standards of behaviour and to promote accountability within local government. This is my first Code of Conduct in 7 years against a fellow councillor. I don't treat this lightly. I believe the Code of Conduct process is a vital mechanism for maintaining public trust and ensuring that elected officials are held to the standard expected of them. I note the Council's decision to appeal the panel's decision and look forward to the court's decision and consideration with regards to this matter, and I will respect that decision when and if it comes out. I'd like to address this matter with the respect and gravity it deserves. I want to state I reserve my right to speak on this matter as it is subject of ongoing legal proceedings. I remind the community and members that this issue will come before the court in the future, and I will exercise my right, if I have to comment at the appropriate time. And as a matter of principle, I believe it's essential to approach this discussion with caution, ensuring that we respect the legal processes and the rights of Councillor Elliott. I trust that the community will understand the necessity of my position and refrain from speculative commentary. Thank you.
Any further discussion? There being none, I'll put that. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against say no. Carried unanimously. Councillor Elliott's coming back in. Alderman Zuko, your motion.
Yes, Lord Mayor, just give me a moment, sorry.
Well, I'm going to move the motion, Lord Mayor.
Or seconded, I think Councillor Coates' hand was up first.
Okay, thank you, Lord Mayor. And I want to reserve my right to, once I've put the motion, reserve my right to speak. Is that okay? That was a process that was introduced. Right, I'm going to move the motion, Lord Mayor. That the Hobart City Council further endorse council amalgamations in accordance with the current state government policy as per councils pursuing voluntary amalgamations, and that the Hobart City Council write to the Glenorchy City Council to initiate preliminary discussions with intent to pursue and develop a voluntary amalgamation strategy consistent with the state government policy, and the Council's right to the Minister of Local Government advising that the Hobart City Council is willing to pursue a strategy for voluntary amalgamations and seeking government advice, government assistance and government funding and incentives for a transition and implementation process. Thanks a lot, Mayor. You know what, I'll go into debate now, so my time can start now. Lord Mayor, one of the things I'd like to point out is I'm the author of this motion, and I've heard in this chamber many times that you know, it's good to speak to the author if you want to amend, change, defer, or move it to committee, or even the motion be put. Be good to know that you know that might be gagged, because I actually all the years I've been here, I hate motions that are gagged. I think everyone has a right to debate what comes forward. I'd like to sort of point out what this is all about. I've read the CEO's points, and I note those points. You know, there was processes about going down this path before, but I'd like to ensure that each elected member gets the point of what I'm trying to put into place here. It's not putting this council and going down the track of immediately amalgamating, because that's not the intent of this motion. I worded this motion very, very carefully, so it doesn't put this council in any position that it can't pull back on. So, number one, we've already got that on the agenda. We supported that in 2017, if I'm correct. So that's our current stand, unless it's changed, and I don't believe we've changed that position. Number two is very, very important, and I ask elected members to read it very carefully. The Hobart City Council right to the Glenorchy to initiate preliminary discussions with intent to pursue. It is like writing to someone and saying, do you want to come to lunch? But we want to discuss amalgamations. Well, there's no point in the CEO or anybody going down the track of writing any reports for that, because we don't know whether or not Glenorchy want to come to a lunch date. Now, if they write back and say, yes, we'd like to sit down and have some discussions, then we've got a lunch date. Then it's very, very important for the CEO of Hobart and the CEO of Glenorchy to sit down and see what it needs to be done to sit around a table and have a lunch date. And what I'd hope that would happen if we end up with a lunch date with Glenorchy is that with the reports of the two officers, we sit around the table and we get the input from all the elected members. You see, I like my steak medium rare. Some people might like their steak rare. And what I'm pointing out to, Lord Mayor, is we've all got different ways of how we like things and what we'd like to do or what we'd like to see. So, and that's the intent, to sit around a table if Glenorchy agreed to the lunch date and discuss what each elected member has or has not, or whether they support or do not support, and what their position is in regards to any amalgamations. Because if we need to go to any workshops or the CEO needs to do a report, that is actually putting the cart before the horse, because if your lunch date's not coming to the party, what's the point of doing your report? Now, I wrote this very, very, very specifically without going down the track of detail. But unfortunately, due to the media report that was in the Mercury and an opinion piece, I had to sort of counteract those comments in the sense that I didn't want to go down the detailed track. Of course, there have been in Queensland some councils that have had to rethink it, but I can't think of how beneficial it's been in Auckland, New Zealand. I actually did the study tour in 2011 of New Zealand. Armageddon has not happened. Can I get an extension of 3 minutes if you wouldn't mind, Lord Mayor, please?
Harvey, seconded by Councillor Posselt. All those in favour say aye.
Thank you.
Say no. Carried unanimously.
Armageddon has not happened in New Zealand. Most recently, we had a workshop in regards to the rate base. But I'd like to bring to everyone's attention, I just travelled the whole of Victoria in my camper van and went through many towns and cities. And I hadn't been to Bendigo for quite a number of years. Bendigo, 125,000 people. Rates are at about $2,000. I couldn't remember for Bendigo years ago, but I actually went up and had a good look at the city, covered with trees, parklands, everything is absolutely amazing. 9 elected members. The Council of Brisbane, 1.36 million people, 27 elected members. Hobart and Glenorchy, at the moment, we've got 22. 2 CEOs, and it keeps on going on. All I'm asking here is our elected members to agree to writing to Glenorchy and saying, are you interested in sitting down and having some initial preliminary discussions in regards to potential amalgamations? If they say yes, let's go and have lunch. It's not going to be lunch, it's going to be a meeting, Lord Mayor, but I like, because in the business world, that's what we do when we want to go and talk business. We'll go and have lunch and discuss it. In the meantime, as I said, and I'm repeating myself, the CEO can write a report. So the process is what I'm asking for here, is let's go down that process. Yes, of course, the state government at this point of time his coffers are a bit empty, but who knows? The minister and the government might look at it and say, well, hey, why don't we use this as a test case for the future of local government? And I want to close down by saying this. If amalgamations do occur, Lord Mayor, it's not about today, it's about the next 100 years. Because what we're doing at the moment is in a local government of 100 years ago. So I urge elected members to consider having a lunch date with Glenorchy and seeing if they say yes. If they say yes, then we'll go to the next stage and have the workshop and our report from our CEO. Thank you.
Councillor Kitsos.
Thank you, Chair. Look, I wanted to thank Alderman Zuko for bringing the motion to the chamber tonight. I think this is a really important issue that really does need to be dealt with head on. I'd actually like to take this one step further, because I think there's a step that we've missed in this process, which is asking Hobart ratepayers what they think about amalgamating with Glenorchy. And I think they're the people who really need to be kept abreast of all of our changes and proposals. So with that kind of background, I would like to foreshadow a motion should this one fail tonight. Can we have that put up on the screen at the moment so I can...
Normally... Oh, sorry, you go ahead.
We're actually debating the substantive motion at the moment. The foreshadowed alternate wouldn't be put up unless the other one. You also don't have it to load up at the moment. So.
Yeah.
While you've got the floor, and why you would prefer your one as opposed to supporting this one.
Sure. That's right. So I'll reserve my right to speak and bring up the foreshadowed motion on the screen once this item has been debated. Yeah. But I think, we cannot move forward with amalgamations without knowing what our ratepayers think. So I agree with Alderman Zuko that we need to get Glenorchy to come to the table on this. We need to find out what they think, and we need to find out what their ratepayers think. So I think until we've had an elector poll on this issue with both councils, that it's potentially a rabbit hole that we could go down over many months doing a lot of research without actually knowing what the community wants. So I can't support the motion as it stands, and I would like to bring a foreshadowed motion which relates to an elector poll through both Glenorchy and Hobart councils, and further details requiring a report which gives us a solid evidence base to make our decision moving forward as a council.
Councillor Lohberger.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'll be quick. I just want to thank Councillor Kitsos for bringing on that foreshadowed motion. She sort of raised a number of issues that I had as well. with Alderman Zuko's motion. I'm actually quite supportive of Alderman Zuko's intent, though. It's just how we get it done, and I think I would prefer personally the foreshadowed item. I've got a few reasons for that, because at the moment we just don't know what the Hobart or Glenorchy ratepayers actually want. I don't think us writing a letter to the Glenorchy CEO is actually going to answer that question either, in respect of what the Glenorchy ratepayers want, or indeed what Hobart wants. There's a lot of there are a lot of issues to go through. Things like, will rates go up for Glenorchy ratepayers? Will the new organisation be able to afford to run 2 community swimming pools, and will Glenorchy face losing its pool all over again? Who knows? We just don't know the answer to these questions. What will the merger cost, in particular, the merger of our IT systems, our HR systems, our billing systems? We know we've just had a big problem with Plan Build. This is the program put forward by the state government as a bit of an option for all councils to use. We've had such a big problem, we've empowered the CEO to go and ask for a discount for this year with that particular program. So these things aren't as easy as they seem. And I just think we need further information, but as Councillor Kitsos points out, we really need to know first, do Glenorchy and Hobart ratepayers actually want to even go ahead with this? If they say yes, then let's do the work and let's move towards that. But if they say no, then we'll have to go down a different path, which will probably be the path we are already going down, which is sharing of resources at higher levels and doing a bunch of other things that were recommended by the process that we went through last time an amalgamation was looked into. So I won't be able to vote for this motion from Alderman Zuko, even though I do support the intent, but I'll be looking forward to voting for the foreshadowed motion. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thanks, Lord Mayor. Look, I've always had an open mind to amalgamations. For years, really. I've always thought if it's for the right reason and it gets the best outcomes, then that's a good thing. With regard to this motion, I'll focus on the second part, which I agree with. The Hobart City Council right to the Glenorchy Council to initiate preliminary discussions, but also I remind, I don't know who was here, I think we were all here.
I was there.
Yeah, we did have a meeting at the rowing club, and I'd like to know, we decided that we'd do it again, but we didn't. So what was the hiccup there? We had one meeting with the Glenorchy Council and nothing came of that. So just like initiate preliminary discussions. We had some preliminary discussions. I'd like to initiate those discussions again. So I'm keen to actually meet with Glenorchy, because I think we need to decide between the two councils whether or not we should go to a plebiscite. Because if there's no appetite between the two councils, then it's all over. But if both councils actually said, okay, we're interested, and we will both agree to do what you guys are after, which is to have a elector poll for both councils, and we see what happens there. So I'm supportive of part 2, and that would lead to an elector poll if both councils agreed. The first part 1, City of Hobart Council endorse council amalgamations in accordance with the current state government policy. I'm not going to endorse all amalgamations. I'm going to endorse this one, that we go forward with this between Hobart and Glenorchy. So I probably would like to see the first one deleted. The third one, council right to the minister, advising that the Hobart City Council is willing to investigate a strategy for voluntary amalgamations rather than pursue. So I'd rather investigate that, subject to an agreement with Glenorchy and Hobart to look at an elector poll. So does that make sense? I have a different approach to this. So the first part, I'm not a supporter. Second part, I am a supporter. Third part, I am a supporter, but it's subject to investigate rather than pursue.
Lord Mayor, I'm happy to change the word pursue to investigate. Mm-hmm. Right. And I'm just trying to get a little bit clearer picture from Councillor Harvey in regards to the elector poll. Could that go down as a 4, that once we've pursued if Glenorchy agreed to a meeting and both parties agree to go to the next step, then we initiate point 4 of an elector poll?
Yes.
Okay, that's fine. I'm happy to add point 4 as an elector poll.
Subject
to the meeting with Glenorchy.
Yeah.
Subject to the meeting with Glenorchy. I'll add it. Yeah, just one second.
No, I think it's...
Coates. I'm just going on. I'm just adding what Councillor Harvey is. I've changed the word pursue to thing, and in regards to 4, that subject to the meeting with Glenorchy, that both parties agree to go forward, an electoral poll be conducted for both cities at the next appropriate time or something like that. Are you happy with that?
And I think that agrees with what Councillor Loberg and Councillor Kitsos were asking
That's right.
for.
No problem. I'm happy to add that, the amendment from Councillor Harvey into my motion. So now it's a substantive motion.
And the first part,
well, it's already, look,
I don't want to endorse amalgamations. I want to just say it's between Hobart and Glenorchy. I'm not endorsing amalgamations for other councils.
Yeah, well, it's not there for other councils, but I understand the point. Would you like, so you want it to be between Hobart and Glenorchy here?
That's it.
Okay, well, I'm happy to change the wording there at the front just to add Hobart and Glenorchy. Okay, thank you. But the Hobart City Council further endorse amalgamations between Hobart and Glenorchy. Okay.
Okay.
I'll accept that in.
Councillor Posselt. Oh, sorry. Councillor Posselt was up first.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'm a little bit concerned about how this is going, the conversation. I'm a little bit concerned that we're not in agreement to put the foreshadowed up on the screen. The reason why I'm saying that is because the person who has put this motion has essentially modified a motion to try to match what the foreshadowed is, but the foreshadowed one may have been more thought out, and the councillors around the table don't have an opportunity to see what that motion is. I just don't see, from a governance perspective, why we can't see what the foreshadowed looks like.
My take on is the foreshadowed is debated if the substantive is lost, and we're still debating the substantive.
So I guess if the mover of the foreshadowed wants to circulate their foreshadowed to elected members, they can do that.
A point of clarity. Am I allowed to clarify something, Lord Mayor? In regards to the accepting the amendment, it's a standard process and procedure.
That's
okay.
Fine.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Posselt, on the motion.
Thank you.
With the, I think I'm a little. Yeah, I would prefer if we could actually see all these amendments.
I've got the amendments written down.
If they
I'd like that on.
If they could be put on the screen.
Foreshadow.
No, yours.
Yeah, okay. So,
verbally agreeing to amend.
Given that governance is not overly amenable to displaying it for the public, I think that the foreshadowed has been put forward with an idea of an elector poll, which has now been absorbed by the putter of this motion without adequate kind of barriers around how that's going to happen because it's being done on the fly, whereas the foreshadowed motion has been thought out around the idea of an elector poll being the trigger. So agreeance from Glenorchy City Council agreeing to hold an elector poll, that is the step from which we move. So in this evening, Alderman Zuko is putting an elector poll comment in his, but if this council commits to holding an elector poll at the next election and doing a whole lot of communication in the interim and getting a report done so that we can all understand in the greatest detail what the potential upsides, downsides, pitfalls, risks, financial implications are for a merger with Glenorchy, we can do that between now and the election in October, and we can attack it on to an elector poll in October at quite minimal cost, and it will be a great consultation exercise, and we will have an answer, very clear answer from our community. But if Glenorchy won't commit to doing the same, we shouldn't start. We shouldn't even have the conversation. It is a very clear step from this council if we say, if Glenorchy are happy to hold an elector poll and we hold a simultaneous elector poll and we respect the result of that elector poll, and we say that now, then it justifies the expense and the time and the potential heartache. You need to remember that amalgamations and mergers I think put significant anxiety and stress into staff. And so if we put this to Glenorchy and say, you need to do the same and commit to an elector poll, or we're not going any further with this, I think it just puts some safety barriers around for everybody, because I don't want everyone to feel anxious. It puts the ball in Glenorchy's court. If Glenorchy say, no, forget it, we're not interested in doing that, then we don't pursue it. And we've gone to the other council and it's been their call that they don't want to pursue it any further. If we go for a meeting first and kind of feel our way through it with Glenorchy, it's fundamentally a matter for Glenorchy City Council. If this council chooses that we are happy to pursue an amalgamation agenda, subject to community endorsement, if we put that to Glenorchy and they say, forget it, we're not interested, that's a conversation for Glenorchy City Council. That is not a conversation that Hobart City Council needs to be involved in. I can't support Alderman Zuko's motion because I feel like it has been amended on the fly and doesn't have enough safety barriers in place to ensure that the elector poll component runs first before anything else, so that we can get a very clear picture from Glenorchy City Council. Do you want to pursue getting the community's sentiment on this and commit essentially to a binding elector poll to decide the future of the two cities and the two councils? Go to the people, find out what they want, have Glenorchy's endorsement to do that. When we have their endorsement, then we go through and do all the reporting. Then we have the meetings. Then the two CEOs come together, but not before Glenorchy commits itself to holding a binding elector poll. That's why I'll support the foreshadowed motion, and I will not support Alderman Zuko's.
Councillor Coates is up now.
Look, a few points to touch on with all this, but I think at the first instance, whenever you're asked to support a motion, first thing I do is look at the actual motion. What is it we're being asked to support? The second thing you do is actually, it's good to look at the officer's response to find out if you do support that and that does get through, what does that actually mean? What are the officers doing there? And in this instance, I think it is instructive, and I don't want to sort of obviously read the whole thing, but, the final paragraph I find very insightful as to the discussion in front of us today, which is, given remaining unanswered questions from the submissions, it's prudent to request a comprehensive report from the CEO, and that will address the outstanding concerns regarding potential amalgamation with Glenorchy and outline a clear process for the council to deliberate on its position. And should we support the direction, i.e. this motion, the CEO will collaborate with Glenorchy Council CEO to prepare a detailed report. So in supporting the items, and I appreciate they've been amended now, what is the officers going to do if we support this? That's what they're going to do. They're going to work collaboratively with Glenorchy, they're going to put together a report, and they're going to seek those outstanding questions and answers. Now, I think that is a good outcome for the community. Inevitably, we do have people who may be voting against this because there is a foreshadowed motion. I think the foreshadowed motion in calling for an elector poll is a little bit the cart before the horse. This motion, as it's worded and even as it's been amended, refers to the intent to get the strategy for the voluntary amalgamations. Now, until we know, that strategy outlines steps, impacts, a strategy of how you get there, a strategy of what the impacts will be, how organisations come together, all those sort of outstanding questions. And once you've got that strategy, then it's for a voluntary amalgamation, right? It's not for a forced one. That's when you could, and that strategy may well outline, as has now been put in as amendment number 4, that you can then seek the elector poll. But the issue with just going, let's just ask the people first. Well, the first question is, what are you asking us? What is this strategy? What does amalgamation mean? What does it look like? How do I think we do need to get a little bit of meat in the bone before you start going out and asking. And the other component of it is, let's not be afraid of pointing out the elephant in the room. It'll take, elector polls aren't binding. It will take genuine goodwill on behalf of the elected members of the City of Glenorchy and the elected members of the City of Hobart to actually enact anything that does get voted on. And so we need to have that discussion, that sit down, the lunch catch-up between the officers to actually provide that information, so that A, people can make an informed decision, and B, elected members can then actually enact upon that. I well remember when we had 74% of the people of Hobart voting for a very clearly articulated position, which in my view then wasn't reflected in the actions of this organisation. Now, I think what is being asked here is putting together that strategy and being able to inform further options. I think it's entirely appropriate. I think just saying we need to go out and do an elector poll before anything can happen, it really is just sort of jumping to stage 6 before we even complete steps 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And so I think, look, I think it was fine as it was. I obviously accepted in along with moving a motion the proposed amendments and happy for those. I don't think they're in any way fatal to the intent. But I would ask and urge members around this table to reread the officer's response, reread that last paragraph, because ultimately that's what we're being asked today. If we pass this, that's what the officers are going to be doing. That's what they've told us they'll be doing in terms of enacting this. And I think that will help members of the community. We do need to bring community members along with this. There are significant proposed reforms in the local government space. There is now the state government voluntary amalgamation policy that's been put out there. And, we do need to engage with it. And we need to engage with it in advance of next October to ultimately make that a better process and to guide the steps going forward. So, look, I think it's entirely appropriate that we're debating this tonight, and I think, and I would urge my fellow council members to support it.
Further discussion,
Lord
Councillor
Mayor,
Harvey.
just a word of clarification here, the last bit, and add Hobart City Council further investigate.
It's not adequate, I don't think. We need to see the motion with the changes. I think this is really
I'm happy. I'll change it.
We've, through you, Lord Mayor, we've picked up the amendments and recut the proposed resolution. They're just about to come up.
Okay.
Those are just my scribbles in the moment, so
Thank
we had
you.
something.
Alderman Bloomfield.
I think this has got really messy, to be honest, because if we don't get this right, we're effectively gambling the value of rates for everyone. By not getting it right, we honestly can't give any idea of what the ratepayers will be paying and what the outcomes could genuinely be, because when I did the research, and this research is as late as 2024 and 2022, there was one council that went into administration as a result. A number of them promised great returns and didn't get them. And there was actually quite a number of times they did mention the New Zealand benefit, but they actually said they excluded it as a special case on the grounds of being a small unitary state whose central government was intent on substantial decentralisation. So possibly we really shouldn't even be considering what happened in New Zealand. We should actually be looking at what happens in Australia. So, and look, I probably don't do it to the same scale, but I've done a lot of work in amalgamating and pulling apart organisations over the years, and you need to be practical. And I'm not seeing the process in these motions. I want to see the process, but I'm not seeing it. Because ultimately, when I drew this up, I saw, yes, have a meeting. Now, we've already done one, and that's what I was sitting here going, but we've already had this discussion, and we did actually have an outcome, and that was that the CEOs were going to work together to find places where they could actually save money. And the areas that they could save money was in procurement, for instance, which I believe is already in process. And we're already starting to see, I believe, savings in this area. So some of the biggest areas where you'd actually get genuine savings, we're already actually doing, and that was part of our process and protocol. So we've probably picked the best parts out already and already getting the advantages. So if we got this meeting and we kind of go, yep, we all want to have a look at this, that's great, but that has to happen first. That meeting has to happen first with the Glenorchy and ourselves. And then once we've got that first initial agreement, then I would suggest that both CEOs from both Hobart and Glenorchy would then report and put together a report together to actually examine what happens in both their councils. Because, for instance, it's like we have a depot that we have all the staff who repair our own machines, but all of that work in Glenorchy is actually done by subcontractor. We have bin collection every week here in Hobart, but only every second week in Glenorchy. So, and we have hundreds and hundreds of policies that all have to be rewritten as a result of the fact that we're going to look at amalgamation. Can you imagine the sheer cost, let alone the IT cost? Because when you actually change two different systems, we don't even know if they have the same antivirus program, the same accounting packages, then training and staff. And then we have specialisation in skill sets with staff who all know about how Glenorchy works in certain areas and who know how Hobart works in certain areas, and these issues create expense. So once we've got that report done, only then could we even consider having a second meeting, examine it ourselves, understand whether we actually want to go ahead, and at that moment, on that agreement, then do the elector poll. Because at that point, we can actually give the truth to the ratepayers and they can vote on fact rather than gamble their rates, which is what I am really concerned that we might be doing. And it's not because anyone here is actually intentionally meant to do that, but without that process, that is what's going to happen. So I expect to see this process here. I'm not really seeing it, and that's what's concerning me. I'm not trying to be difficult, I'm just trying to be practical. The way I just outlined would be practical. I don't know whether or not you'd like to defer and get that drawn up that way, but that would be what I would support, and that is all I will support.
Further discussion? Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. We've been talking about this topic for a really long time, and being the impatient person I am, I thank Alderman Zuko for bringing this, because from how I'm reading it is that we basically push the wagon along and try to make things happen. So it's advancing the discussions on amalgamation. Point two around, but essentially the core part for me there is that we develop the voluntary amalgamation strategy, which I imagine, well, which would be something would come back to both councils for consideration, which could build in the concept of going to the elector poll. I agree. I think having the local government elections next year, it would make sense to have an elector poll with that. And that plan of attack and the mapping out that Alderman Bloomfield as well has said could be part of that. So pushing the amalgamations, which I strongly believe in. We had the resolution a while back and discussions around working more closely with Glenorchy and sharing resources and things like that. But I haven't really seen that much of it. It might be the odd thing here and there, but you know, we have climate assemblies just for ourselves, which cost $100,000, and then we have climate forums that cost $20,000. And I haven't heard any mention of Glenorchy in that. Most things that come across our desks are things that could be relevant for both Glenorchy and Hobart. But it's rare to see that lens being applied. So the resolution we previously made isn't spurring enough of the type of action we need. So we need to, my view is we need to push for, I strongly support amalgamations with Glenorchy, if not bigger. I support the development of the voluntary strategy. I think that's a great thing. We're asking for help from the state government. This is all subsequent, subject to what the voluntary strategy says. And a poll is a good idea in terms of asking the community what it wants. So I don't see any of this as locking anything in stone. I see it as pushing forward something that can be left on the back burner for a really long time if we don't take the bull by the horns and actually start to do something about it, because enough talking, it's absolutely time for action.
Further discussion, Councillor Posselt. Have you spoken?
Yeah, question. Point 4, held at an appropriate time. Can we have some clarity on what that is, in, like the intent behind that? That could mean an elector poll outside of an election cycle, which has significantly more cost. It could be an elector poll in 2030. What's an appropriate time mean?
Lord Mayor, that would be subject to both councils agreeing to it, but I would assume at the next council election next year. But at the end of the day, that is if there's an election next year, because anything could happen. And to my point of view, if that wording was the next council election, that's fine by me. But I think the appropriate time would be in discussion with both councils, and I have no doubt I would support an elected poll at the next council election. I wouldn't support an elected poll outside of it because of the cost.
Further discussion? Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, Chair. In 1907, there were 149 town boards that ran Tasmania. 149. Fast forward to 1993, there were 46. Bruny Island even had its own council, and Grader, and Works Depot, and CEO, or GM, whatever you want to call him in the day. And I remember the hoo-ha that went on then. The world was going to collapse, that all these regional areas were going to fall over, you know. And here we are, you know, it's the same old, same old. Look, I understand how people are scared and they're worried, and they find change hard. It's hard, it's difficult for some people. But look, you know, we've got time, we'll look after you, things will be okay. A lot of you got day jobs. You know, it's just the way it is. And, you know, overnight, 6 of us will lose their jobs here, the election. That's just the way of the world. Actually, if you looked at the statistics, if you break down the votes and percentage way you slice and dice it, I think 7 of those who were elected, the top 7 here with the primaries and preferences, would be re-elected. But just depends on the new voter, of course. But the reality is we lose half. The climate doesn't stop at Creek Road. The world goes on, you know. All these other things, you know. I mean, and to use as an argument, we've got different operating systems for computers and rates and all that. Well, let's not change that forever. Well, when is that going to happen? I mean, there's possibly 29 different rates accounting systems out there, 29 different GMs, 29 different graders, 29 work depots. The multiplication thing is just insane. And since '93, where they had the guts to do something like this, look at the advent of the internet. That's why, for good reasons, there was that 149 town boards back in 1907. So what the public look for, what their electors, ratepayers look from us is leadership. And leadership is us making some tough decisions and going forward and coming back to them after doing our initial work and say to them, this is what we've done, instead of running to them and saying, oh, we're too scared to make a decision, we're going to leave it all up to you, and then we're going to come back and we're going to tippy-toe through this and maybe another review, and then we can defer it again and all that. They want leaders. And if we're leaders, we're going to step up to the plate here, make some tough decisions, probably vote ourselves out of a job. So what, you know? Let's think of the electors here. And, you know, what's happened since that big powwow we got together with Glenorchy at the rowing shed some years ago? The answer is nothing, not that I'm aware of. It's been suggested there's been some incredible advancements. I haven't seen anything. It's never been reported to me. I don't know. So it can't be all that great. The only thing I've seen was a photo opportunity with the 2 Lord Mayors at the Rivulet, which is right on the boundary. A few plants were planted. Not a nice little initiative. It was great. I'm not condoning that, but it was great. So look, let's step up. Let's be leaders. Let's show our ratepayers what we can do. This is common sense by Alderman Zuko. What he's saying is considered. He's adjusted his motion here to suit other people in the room, and let's be brave and let's be leaders and let's get out there and show the electorate that we're not scared if we've got to lose our jobs. We're here for the betterment of Tasmania and for Hobart and Glenorchy.
Further discussion? Councillor Dutta.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I just want to make a number of observations from the discussion and debate that we've been having. Firstly, the first point I want to make is that I support in principle the amalgamation of the 2 city councils. That has been my position all along, that I support it in principle, and I will do so again. Point number 2 that I want to make here in my observation is that we are in fact debating the process. And I think that is a matter of concern. We have in this chamber time and time again have heard how consultation with the community is so important. So when it suits us, we say, let's take a leadership role and make a leadership decision. Otherwise, we'll say, come on, let's go back and consult with the community. And I think it is an important point that has been brought up, that we need to consult with the community. Consultation is important in a major issue of this nature. So it's not a matter of being leaders. We have many times have made decisions and have gone against those ratepayers, either for or against. And we have put ourselves in a difficult position. So for me, it is, in principle, I support it. Secondly, the process is my concern. It's lighthearted. I would love to see and debate the foreshadowed motion to see what elements are there, endorsed, supported, cemented in the process procedure, as Alderman Louis Broomfield have made some points in there. And point number 3 for me is this, that there is a purpose in all this. And all of us are like-minded in this. We have a purpose of amalgamation, and I think we are moving towards that as our end goal. But how to get there in the process is what we are questioning and asking ourselves. And the final point that I want to make here is this. Yes, the council staff have very clearly stated that it seems prudent. Now, many a time council staff have made these judgments in their call, and some of us have gone against those calls. So it's quite okay. Don't feel uncomfortable. It's quite comfortable, it's quite okay. If you feel in your right to go against the decision of council or the recommendation or the point, there's nothing wrong with it. We as elected members, we've got to make the decision. And most of us, in my view, the feel I have is that in principle, we support the amalgamation. It is just a matter of process as to how to get there. Thank you.
Any further discussion before Councillor Zuko has a chance to respond or sum up? If there's no further discussion, I'll just say a few words. I also want to say that I have an open mind to amalgamations. I'm also open to the potential idea of a Greater Hobart Council in line with the Greater Hobart Act. We have a Greater Hobart Strategic Partnership with Clarence and Kingborough. So I certainly think that amalgamations is an important topic. However, what I don't support is this I believe this motion commits to things that I don't feel like I have enough advice on. I do think it's policy on the fly because of the wording of this motion. I'll just remind people that this says that we are endorsing council amalgamation between Hobart and Glenorchy City Council. Now, if we then say, well, what advice did you have before you made that endorsement? I would say, well, I don't have any advice. I don't know what impact it will have on services. I don't know what impact it will have on our annual plan. I don't know what impact it'll have on our staff. I don't know what impact it'll have on your budget. I don't know what it'll cost in rates. I don't know how many staff hours will be required in the next year to pursue this. We have an incredibly ambitious, established annual plan that we only signed off on a matter of months ago. And through this motion, we basically add a huge amount of work to the staff to start a process of developing an incredibly complex piece of work, which is to basically start the process of trying to develop a policy on amalgamations. Now, again, I don't mind us doing that work, but the way this is worded, that we're endorsing and starting that work, and we're investigating the voluntary amalgamation process now, without having any further advice, is I just think too loosey-goose from my perspective to be a good governance. I want to just refer people to the staff advice, where they do say, many of the concerns and expectations of the council that were raised in 2 submissions, and those submissions were only in 2023 and in 2024, and I'll be interested to see what the vote was on those submissions, but I think a lot of us voted for them because we were thinking about this needing to be a well-considered, well-consulted process. But it says here, many of the concerns and expectations of the council that were raised in respect to a potential amalgamation with Glenorchy City Council remain. Specifically, there has not been any engagement to enable ratepayers to have their say and properly inform the council. Equally, since that time, there has not been any specific investigations in respect to council's expectations, assessment of the financial catchments, consideration of economic clusters of activities, connections, maintaining community connections to the place. Investigations to secure the mountains process are still to be completed. Goes on to say that we need to seek advice on whether the government would have any money, funding, incentives for any transition. I think there are a number of remaining questions, and if this motion was something more like that council seeks an update from the 2 CEOs on the work that they've done, to look at shared services and seek a meeting with Glenorchy to discuss further steps and seek some advice from the CEO at a point in time around the issues and the process that we would need to go through to do a proper investigation and the cost of that, but also the cost of that process, thank you, on the current annual plan, because I just don't want us to keep loading up our staff with thought bubbles every meeting that actually have really significant financial and resource constraints. And there are so many other things that will have to be put to one side if we endorse this motion, which is quite directive. It basically starts a process off and requires a huge amount of work. Thank you.
Lord Mayor, it's not a thought bubble. I've been on the agenda for amalgamation since 1999 quite a number of times. And in regards to reading point 1, I think what you're doing, Lord Mayor, is you're only reading point 1 to a certain point, and I'll read it very carefully again. The Hobart City Council further endorses council amalgamations between Hobart and Glenorchy in accordance with the current state government policy as per councils pursuing voluntary amalgamations. Now, the state government has a full report on this and also a process already in place, so we don't have to reinvent the wheel. So that is what that is saying. It doesn't say we're going to have the marriage. It's going to say we're going to go down the track of looking at the marriage in accordance to that policy. That's on the government website. So it's there. The process is there. In regards to the costs, New Zealand spent $200 million on amalgamations. Now it saves $300 million per annum. So they spent once $300 million, then they get $300 per annum going forward. Imagine that in 100 years' time. In regards to we support the principle and process. This is process. This is contacting Glenorchy City Council to develop a voluntary amalgamation process. That is process. Point 2 is process. I know process. There's no point in going to the elector poll first if we don't want to do it. Now, in regards to the constant, you should have spoken to your fellow elected member in regards to this motion before you put the motion. Wait a minute, I've put the motion up. I said this earlier, no one contacted me and said, are you interested in putting in an elector poll into it? Now, on radio, Leon Compton said, would you support a plebiscite? That question was asked to Louise Bloomfield and me. I said yes, 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 a number of times. So that was always on the agenda. But you've got to get the first step done first. You've got to invite the players to the table and say, do you want to have lunch? Do you want to discuss this? I've got 30 seconds. Now, at the end of the day, we can all speculate whether rates will go up or not. These are all speculation. This is all information that we'll get down the track. I'll repeat, this is about going to lunch. The elector poll will happen. Of course, it's got to happen. It's not rocket science. At the appropriate time. Well, it'll happen most likely at the next election, because that'll be the best time to have it, and that would be the appropriate time. The last word I want to say is I could have pulled this motion any time. I'm not going to pull it. I'll let the debate, the vote happen, and so be it.
Okay. So I'll put Alderman Zuko's motion. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no. Show of hands, all those in favour.
Favour, Alderman Zuko, Councillor Elliott, Councillor Coates, Councillor Kelly, Councillor Harvey.
And against?
Councillor Dutta, Councillor Purcell, Councillor Kitsos, Councillor Lohberger, Alderman Bloomfield and the Mayor. 6-5. Yeah, lost.
Okay, so that has not gone through. So Councillor Kitsos, if you'd like to talk to your foreshadowed motion.
Yep. Thank you, Lord Mayor. If we could have the updated version I sent at 5:30 put on the screen, please. I don't believe that's the correct version.
That's the version.
Yes, yes. While we're finding that up on the board, look, I think we've got the gist of the motion and the detail in an email that was circulated at 5:30 to elected members, the CEO and to the Legal and Governance Officer. In the meantime, I think there's been some really valid discussion around the table on Alderman Zuko's motion, and I'm hoping that we can move the process of discussion on amalgamations and find a way forward with this tonight, because as many of us have stated, this has been on the table for a long time and it's complicated and it's difficult, but do we want to keep talking about this, or do we want to look at a voluntary amalgamation with Glenorchy? The way I see it is that we don't have the evidence. So with a background in evidence-based research, this has to be how we form an opinion. It can't just be conjecture. So one of the key elements to research is making sure that you've engaged with all of the groups of people that you need to form a valid opinion. And I think our ratepayers are really key to this. I genuinely do. They're the people who elected us into this role, and we don't know what they think. We don't know what they think in Hobart, and we don't know what they think in Glenorchy. So that's just one piece of this piece of research that needs to be done. So the foreshadowed talks about the council committing to hold an elector poll, and also asking Glenorchy to commit to holding an elector poll. Now, this elector poll would be held as part of the local government elections in 2026 and therefore not cost any money. So it's an opportunity that we have that doesn't come about very often to get an opinion from our ratepayers on issues that affect them. And I think that this is a really timely thing to do.
So, seconder for your foreshadowed motion. Councillor Dutta.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. So I think it's really important that we understand that holding the elector poll is only a part of what this motion is asking people to do. And as I said, it's because we need to go out to our ratepayers as part of doing valid research. It doesn't say to wait until the result of that elector poll has come in before then seeking additional information. So if Glenorchy would like to come on board with this and agree to have an elector poll during the local government elections at a cost-neutral outcome for both councils, then I think it's a really good time for us to look more into the more complex nature of this decision before us, where we're talking about services, where we're talking about infrastructure, where we're talking about staff. So the remaining part of the motion, which is now up on the board, we're actually looking from point 2 onwards here. So I won't read it to you because it's in front of you, but I will just run you through the gist of it. So it's requesting that we prepare an evidence-based report about the implications, opportunities and risks. It's to include an assessment of the feasibilities, benefits, challenges and community impacts, which will also include rates. It's to outline the legislative, financial, operation and governance factors which will need to be examined. It will be about establishing a funding arrangement with the state government, who really should be bearing the cost associated with amalgamating these two cities. And it's to write to Glenorchy City Council and request that they come on board with us and come on the journey of collating, researching and putting together that report. Now, I know that's a huge body of work and I certainly don't want it to detract from our ambitious annual plan, but I think that if this is happening, that we need to have an informed decision so we can vote on this and move forward. So far we have our research that we've conducted, so we've got our strategic review that's evidence-based, that's coming from both councils. We're going to our ratepayers to see what they think, and then all of that is to be collated and brought to council for a workshop where we can actually have the chance to sit around and ask our questions and to weigh up the evidence before us before making a decision and moving forward. Now at that stage, should we have really positive information, we'll have some really good news to share with people. Should we have concerns that have been found in the evidence, we can communicate that back with our ratepayers to explain the pros and cons of moving forward with an amalgamation. But really at the moment we don't have any of this information. I know there's been a lot of work done in the past. I know that the state government has an in-depth report, but I note that they say voluntary amalgamations. And I think that that's really key here, that we need to make sure that Glenorchy want to have this conversation, this date, this lunch with us and move forward on the journey. And I also think that there's potentially other things that need to be looked at, like the Lord Mayor referenced with a Greater City of Hobart council, which might involve more councils than just Glenorchy potentially. So I think this is complicated, I think it's important, I think it's dragged on long enough. Let's work out what we can do with this moving forward, and I really hope that you will consider voting for this well thought out, foreshadowed motion this evening.
Councillor Posselt.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Thanks to Councillor Kitsos and Councillor Dutta for bringing this, and again thank you to Alderman Zuko for putting the item on the table. There is a number of steps that need to occur before we can amalgamate and form a new city. What that city looks like at this stage looks like a City of Hobart and City of Glenorchy merger. And there is considerable benefits, but there's also risks, financial risks, reputational risks, staff risks. There's a whole lot of stuff that we need to understand and the public need to understand. Some of the potential benefits I see are an organisation that's so well resourced in comparison to smaller councils that perhaps a Glenorchy City Council combining with Hobart City Council could deliver light rail with the assistance of federal government on their own, without the state government's input. These are the sorts of opportunities that might arise in a report. But to do that report, we've seen the council spend more than $200,000 getting reports into the stadium so that we best understand that piece of infrastructure. In some ways, this is a much larger, much bigger picture thinking, much forward thinking item for discussion in the stadium. We are looking at what the future of governance in this city will be probably for half a century. The chances of it changing again in half a century is small. So we do need to do that due diligence, and it might cost $250,000, $300,000 to get all those reports together so we fully understand them. The idea that we would do that, any of that work, without Glenorchy making a very solemn commitment that they too will pursue an elector poll would be short-sighted. We would be wasting time of our staff who have so much on their plate and thank you to the staff for the work you do, we would be wasting the resources which the ratepayer gives us. So the first step here is in the foreshadowed motion. Glenorchy, will you commit to this? If you will, then we'll start to talk about commissioning these reports and how we're going to fund them so that we can best inform the community. The second piece of the puzzle, we are all elected members around this table, and there's colleagues over in Glenorchy that are the same. Our job is to represent the people, their views of the world, and the way we can best get community sentiment on something as complex as this is to provide them with information, to have comprehensive comms plans to make sure that they get the good and the bad of the story, that are completely neutral. Because this motion doesn't say that we support an amalgamation. This motion says that we support an elector poll and that we'll respect its results. That puts the onus on the community. The onus on us is to educate the community. The onus of decision making, we are doing proper deliberative democracy here. Elector polls were not set up for cable cars and the movement of universities for which a council has very minimal control or say over. This is a true purpose for an elector poll, to ask, do you want your city to be completely changed in the way that the structure works, the way it's managed? Are you happy for your rates to go up a little bit? What are the complications for your pool? You tell us and we will do as you say. That's what this motion does. And if Glenorchy commits to it, then let's see what happens. So over to you, Glenorchy City Council. If this motion gets up this evening, the ball is in your court. If you want to pursue community advocacy, deliberative democracy, the idea that the community can make this decision for us, then commit to what we're asking tonight. And if they don't, then it's fine. We continue with our strategic plans. I might consider bringing an intergenerational plan motion to this council, because we will need to plan a generation ahead, because voluntary amalgamations of Glenorchy and Hobart are on the table, and once they are pulled off, it won't be revisited for another 25 years. So we need to start thinking about the next generation. So over to Glenorchy, ball's in your court. Let's see what happens.
Further discussion, Councillor Bloomfield. Alderman Bloomfield.
It's all right, I've already had my title removed as well. Okay, so basically one of the things with this is I like it. It's much more in line with what I wanted. The only point is that there's no off switch. You get all the way down to E and you write to the Glenorchy City Council, and at the bottom it says require the report to be presented to a workshop. But what if this data is bad? I want to know that if we get all the data together, we have the agreement, we will go and do the research says this is a bad decision. We need to have an off switch that says, well, if it's a bad decision and we know it's a bad decision, we really shouldn't be taking it to elector poll. And I think we need to remember too that this is going to be an expensive report. So too is the elector poll. So we could be looking at around about $500,000 worth of cost on this. It's going to have to come out of our budget to settle down an age-old discussion. And I think that's actually really important. And the other thing too that I felt was actually quite relevant to the earlier discussion was this particular amendment, or this motion doesn't use the word endorse. Endorse suggests that we are all absolutely gung-ho, going to run off and do it. This isn't doing that. This is actually saying this is the process. We're not going to endorse anything, I would think, unless we actually think it's a good idea. We only have a concept. We don't actually have fact. And once again, I need to really highlight that I don't want to gamble the rates. You know, we need to know that we actually have good outcomes for everyone. We need to know that Hobart isn't accidentally going to annex Glenorchy, that they are going to maintain their identity, that they are going to have an outcome that they like. And don't forget too, we discussed things like wards. When you discussed the earlier point about wards, wards actually cost around 30 to 40% more than ordinary elections. So all of these things cost. And even when they discussed earlier with the New Zealand brilliant outcome, you need to remember it took 5 years before there were positive effects. So it's not like for like. None of this is like for like, and none of this is affordable at the beginning. It's extremely expensive. And it's fraught. It also means too, if we go down this path, until this is knocked on the head, it's now going to be more difficult potentially to employ staff because we have an unknown. Will they have a job in 2 years? We don't know now because we're looking at an unknown again. As much as we have what effectively is a casual role, we know it completes in 4 years and then we have to reapply again. Staff have an expectation of ongoing employment. So I do feel that some of this is still fraught, and I think we need to go into this with our eyes open. And as long as there is a off switch, if the data comes back it's bad, that we actually say no electopol because this is not a good value for anyone, then I am happy to support.
Further discussion? Councillor Posselt.
Thank you, Lord. Just a very brief question. A decision made tonight could be overturned in light of Alderman Bloomfield's commentary, could be overturned with a majority council decision between now and the elected poll. Is that correct? Yeah. Cool. Thank you.
Okay, further discussion on the motion. Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I still feel that this motion is a bit about face and confusing because in point 1, we're committing to an elected poll and respecting the result, which means that we're going to do, the literal meaning of that is that whatever the majority votes is what we will do. Yeah. So therefore we don't need to do, if the evidence-based report, if the majority says yes, amalgamate, and the evidence says don't amalgamate and vice versa, then you either are making it based on the evidence or you're respecting the result. It doesn't really make sense to me that we've got in point 1 that we're respecting the result, which is basically, if that is one option, that the community tells us which one they want to do, and there'd probably be, well, there would be, I imagine there'd be for and against campaigns in the community trying to swing the vote either way. So if that's one pathway, but then we're kind of doing a bit of both pathways. We're respecting the result on one hand, and then we're doing evidence-based on the other. And my view on this is that we need to through a voting process, we need to, and it might not be tonight, but each elected member needs to do their own research, their own look into and, deep thinking in terms of what they think is best, and then lay their cards on the table, and we commit to that. And when it comes to the evidence-based the feasibility, evidence-based report around opportunities and things like that will require like a full disclosure sort of due diligence process. It is a significant amount of work, as it's as if you were looking at to merge two businesses, and that would be a massive project. I saw Alderman Zuko's motion as the preliminary steps to get there, whereas this is basically saying we're going to do an electoral poll and respect the result, but then over here we're going to do an evidence-based process too with full disclosure. It's messy and it doesn't really make sense because it's two processes blended together, and part of me also feels like this is a delaying tactic to avoid a commitment to something and actual action. It delays it to at least next year, and a kind of a bit of a wash our hands of it type thing, and not having to make the hard decision. So, yeah, for the same reasons as some cited as being for why they couldn't support Alderman Zuko's motion, I feel the same way about this because it's messy and conflicting.
Alderman Zuko.
Oh, Lord Mayor, I love it. Absolutely love it. The Council commits to holding an electoral poll on amalgamations of Glenorchy and Hobart at the next local government elections and respecting the result. But that's contingent on Glenorchy agreeing to do the same. So, let's just kick it down the road a bit further and then a bit further more. Because I don't know why you need two there, or two and everything else. Yeah. Because if we're going to respect the result, There's no point in spending 1 red cent until we got the result, because once you've got the result of the elector poll, that is when you go down the track of doing something else. Sorry, you can nod your head all the time. Look, I understand business, right? You want the electors of our 2 cities to say to us yay or nay. That's what number 1 is saying. If they say nay, game's over. So there's no point in doing 2 in the meantime, and anything under 2. Oh, sorry, I apologise. Yes, F. Write to Glenorchy and request they participate in point 1, because that's all that's needed at this point in time. This is an overcomplicated motion, right, rather than sitting around a table and having a discussion. Are you interested in having a discussion for amalgamations? If the answer is yes, okay, how are we going to do it? What we're doing here is putting in place how we're going to do it, but Glenorchy might have another opinion, another viewpoint, and that's the point of having preliminary discussions. When I go and buy a business, I have preliminary discussions, I look at all, then get all the details, because I've committed to it. At the moment, we've got no commitment from Glenorchy, and we have no commitment, and we won't have a commitment until potentially the end of October next year for number 1 to occur. You can't go with the others. So I can't support it because this is putting the cart in front of the horse. Sorry. It might look like a nice fancy motion, but I've got to say to you, it is absolutely all over the place. What we should be doing here, if you really want to do something, is delete everything and go, Council commits to holding elector poll amalgamations at the next council election and respecting the result contingent of Glenorchy doing the same. Then we take the next step, once we know what the ratepayers want. If you want to go down that path, I'll only support 1. I won't support anything else.
Councillor Lohberger.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I just wanted to start with a question to the bringer of this motion. The reports referred to in sort of parts 2 onwards, were you proposing that these be available before the elector poll as information for the voters, or after the elector poll?
Before the elector poll.
Before the elector poll. Thank you, and thank you, Lord Mayor. That's what I thought. I mean, when I spoke previously on the previous motion, I talked about the potential costs and benefits, and some of the costs potentially are huge. And again, I'll mention that Glenorchy potentially could lose its pool again. I mean, those ratepayers need to know that sort of thing before they vote in an elector poll, not afterwards. So, you know, we're being told to do our own research, we're being told we'll get information down the track. I don't think that's good enough. I think the voters, the ratepayers, need to know exactly what the costs and benefits will be before they vote, not afterwards. So I do wish to make this point. I'm not sure if a slight change is needed to the motion, Councillor Kitsos, just to make that clear, but I did think it was clear until that previous contribution. So I'm glad that is the case. Look, the fact about amalgamations, something that I've really noticed about them over the years is that they're a bit like Media Watch. Everybody loves them until it affects where they are. It's like Media Watch, everybody loves it until they're on it. You know, until you find out that you're potentially going to lose your pool, or your rates might go up, or your local council chamber might move 60 k's away. You know, when these first came up, I was living in the Huon, and the talk was about amalgamation with Kingborough. These are the sorts of things that the ratepayers actually need to know. So I am quite supportive of doing it in this direction. I do think Alderman Bloomfield made a good point about what if all these reports come back and they're really negative. Well, if it's prior to the elector poll, then that's the information we present to the ratepayers, because it's the honest information, and the ratepayers will make a call on it, and I feel like that call will be pretty final if we do this work and that elector poll goes ahead. They will either say they do want to do it or they don't, and I think before they make that call, they need to have every piece of information possible, particularly about potential costs, potential for rates to go up, potential for services to be cut, potential for jobs to be cut in their local council, potential to, say, lose either the Glenorchy Council Chamber building or this one. I mean, I can't imagine that happening, but surely when people think about the rate the so-called savings, the mythical savings from amalgamations, a big part of that is often, oh, we've only got one council chamber, oh, we've only got one CEO, oh, we've only got one set of councillors. It kind of stops there. Once you get down a bit further, you can't cut back the number of guys that cut the grass. You can't cut back the crews that do all the work on the roads because they are busy people in their own municipality right now. And of course, when it comes to the mowing guys in spring, everybody wants them. So there are a lot of things that we do need to know as voters before we were to vote in a poll like that. And I actually support this particular motion because I think it does give the information, and as I've said over and over again, particularly about the potential costs for ratepayers. They need to know beforehand. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Councillor Coates.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Look, I've heard a lot of discussion tonight about why all the items outlined under Section 2 are quite important and why they help the community in understanding and why we need to be careful in understanding the implications for employment, for services, for all these sort of things. But, like, you know, I don't know if it's just that people forget, but, like, I've got a 200-page report here called Future of Local Government Review. Right, final report. It was only 2023, not that long ago. Independent, highly respected, evidence-based, and it goes into exceedingly high levels of detail regarding legislative, financial, operational, governance factors, regarding potential funding pathways forward, regarding, you know, it gives 29, I think it is, recommendations. It even went so far as to say, sorry, I take it, it's 37. It was 29 councils, 37 recommendations. You know, I mean, recommendation 4 strikes out as me, but the City of Hobart and Glenorchy City Council merge. The Future of Local Government Review, having considered all the experts, having done all the research, having gone to the community, having run a very extensive and public process, even went so far as to say, well, it should actually be forced. Now, when it comes to leadership, you know, there are members of the community that didn't like that, and the response was, well, we'll put in place a voluntary amalgamation policy, and that's what ultimately we were discussing tonight. We have the evidence base. It's there, it was done. I couldn't think of anything worse than us spending an extra, what was it proposed, $500,000 to reinvent the work that was done in 2023. You know, I note that what we have now before us and is foreshadowed is if we have this, and by the way, it is of interest to me that they had to put it in the motion and we respect the results, because I think sometimes elector polls are only as good as the council's willingness to actually then enact them. But we're then requesting that all this extra work be done. We're then seeking for Glenorchy Council to commit to the elector poll and for that to happen in the first instance. Like, we've actually done this chunk of work. What we need to know is what's the strategy going forward to implement it. We've got the Future of Local Government Reform in front of us. We've got the recommendations as they pertain to the City of Hobart and City of Glenorchy. And we've now got a policy that's been published saying, here's your voluntary amalgamation strategy. We need to get the officers to say, well, how would we enact that strategy and take that to the electors, and critically in this year leading up to next October, have people who are willing to be honest and open with the electors, that we will go down this path. We will follow the professional advice and the views of the experts when they put it forward, because we think ultimately it's going to actually lead to benefits. Look, I would encourage everyone, you don't have to read all 200 pages, but read the executive summary. You know, literally the start, it opens up with, the status quo is neither an optimal nor sustainable model for the sector. That was a professional finding. You know, this to me unfortunately, seems to be a way of seeking further advice, further review, further assessment, finding ways to obfuscate and delay this process, seeking ways for others, Glenorchy in this instance, to sort of poison pill the proposal. I think we do need to show leadership. We need to be willing to stick our heads up and say, we've got the evidence base, it's in the best interest of community, and we will pursue this. We've got the voluntary amalgamation policy. Council officers, interact with that, come back to us. How do we progress? Sit down with Glenorchy and talk about it, and give that clear thing so that people can ultimately make an informed choice next October. Hopefully next November, we'll be standing in this room and we'll be voting on an amalgamation following the future of local government reform and finally having the benefits accrue to the community. Thank you.
Question, that's all.
Alderman Zuko is up
Yeah, it's
first.
the question through to the mover of the motion, the seconders. Would it be possible to split this into two, part one, part two, please?
Councillor Kitsos and the other.
Can you scroll back to part one, please?
No, look, thank you for the question. I think that the motion needs to stay as it is because it really is designed to work together, and I do have a small amendment proposed that might allay some of those concerns, which I can bring in a minute when it's my turn in the debate.
Okay, further discussion? Councillor Kelly.
Just to follow up from Councillor Coates, I just emailed all the elected members, in case they hadn't read it, the State Government report into council amalgamation, 200 pages. The consultation in this document over 3 different levels that did it, thousands of people, just go into how they consulted. It is perhaps one of the best consultations you will ever see in your lives. They break down rates, information and all that. Sure, we'll have a little bit of information we can do, but it's just so comprehensive and so out there. I've never had one person come up to me and say, I think it'd be a good idea to increase the amount of councillors. Nor have I had anyone say, I think it's a good idea to maintain them. I think one of the biggest hot topics I get is, you've got too many councils. What are you going to do about it? That's one of the hot topics that I consistently get. The report's there. I encourage everyone to read it. This is weak. It's embarrassing and it's not good governance. You know, at least Councillor Zirko is prepared to break it in two, and it shows how uncooperative some people can be, as to not want to even try and work out some bit of a compromise here. I find that disappointing. The evidence is there with the state government evidence. I mean, and really, we might scaremongering by saying we're going to lose a pool at Glenorchy. What about the mowing guys? Really, is that the best we can do? Is that the best? This is embarrassing, this part of this conversation, to hear such tripe as that. We know we can do better than that.
Okay, what's your point of order?
Opening statement that you made.
Yeah, I'm just asking Councillor Clay for you to consider the language, use of words like tripe, and I think that's just a little bit disrespectful. So maybe just explain your position rather than trying to be disparaging of your colleagues.
I think we can do better as leaders. We've been put here to make some tough decisions. Let's get on and make them. It's been flogged to death, this whole issue. The public and the ratepayers want response and action. Let's do it. I can't support this motion. It's been put here tonight.
Just ask just a question on the 2023 Future of Local Government report. Did that include detailed modelling about the implications of a City of Hobart Glenorchy Council merger?
We need to take it on notice and have a look. There was modelling completed behind the recommendations, but I would need to...
Oh. You can if you've got the answer to that question.
Yeah, the recommendation was that they work together. It wasn't recommending to merge.
Yeah, it was more just was there detailed modelling, and I don't think there was on any particular
Well, there was
council.
quite a lot in here on that, and it was.
But on the sector, I think more, wasn't it? Yeah. Okay. Further discussion. Councillor Harvey.
Yeah, Lord Mayor, it's a funny debate because we're kind of in the same tent. We're just arguing over, I don't know, slight differences. But I think we all agree that we need to have a chat with Glenorchy and see if we're on the same page when it comes to amalgamation. So, tick, I'm happy with that. I think that's a really good idea. Let's talk to them before we go any further, because if they say we're not interested, then it's all over. Or we've got to convince them somehow through whatever the reports come up with. But then we've also got to revisit these reports to see what the pros and cons were as well. So there's a bit of work to do. So having that data available prior to an elector poll, I think is important, because people need to go into an elector poll understanding what the conditions are, the situation is, what the pros and cons of a merger is. We can't just say, like I was suggesting, I supported Alderman Zuko's position before, but I think that research is important. We need to know what we're talking about, and the public need to know what the implications are of a merger. So, yeah, tick that. We need to have that research. It looks like a lot of it's already been completed, but the officers also need to consider what's new, what's different. Then we have an elector poll, and the exciting part about the elector poll is the 2026 election will be completely based on for amalgamations or against amalgamations. So that will be, a one-issue election at the time. So good luck with that, everyone. Take your sides and argue your case. But the elector poll is important with an informed ballot paper that goes out with it, but also both councils also need to support what's going on rather than have dissent within the councils. So if both councils are supportive of, then we've got more chance of achieving something than if both councils are, or if it's split within the council, that half the council support a merger and the other half don't because we couldn't agree on the wording. So a bit tricky. So if we're all consolidated, if we're all on the same page and we can come up with whatever the appropriate wording is at the appropriate time, we might have more chance. But the other important point here is I wasn't sure what people thought about amalgamations. So yourself, you've just said that you'd be happy you'd consider a greater Hobart Council. The rest here seem like they're in favour of having a couple of councils, Glenorchy and Hobart, merge at some point for the right reasons. So we're all kind of circling this. It's been on the agenda for a long time. So I think keeping that open mind amongst all of us and with Glenorchy, if they've got that open mind as well, and we have a process, and that process leads to the appropriate wording for an elector poll, and then we see what the elector poll offers up. But then if the elector poll is split 50-50, how do you go about that? If there's better campaigns against or better campaigns for, that's what might decide the elector poll, because no votes are often much easier to run campaigns for than yes votes. So there's a lot of water to go under the bridge here, but if we can all settle down and think about looking into this thoroughly with Glenorchy, we might get an outcome, or we might support the status quo. But it's an interesting process, and I'm glad to have had this conversation. So thanks, Alderman Zuko, for bringing it to us. Thanks to everyone else for your contributions. It's made me think about the process a lot more, listening to everyone tonight. I will support the motion here, but I'll also foreshadow that I'm not locked into this as well for the future, but this is what we've got at the moment. I've supported the last motion, I'll support this one, but we're also able to change our mind or change things around into the future through you, Lord Mayor, to the CEO. Would that be the case if we decide there's a better thing we haven't thought of, or wording that might improve this down the track when it comes back to us with report after report? We'll be deciding on all of those things as we travel forward on this. So I'm comfortable with this. It's the starting point. It might shift, and we'll let it roll on.
Further discussion? Councillor Dutta.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Most of the points have been made, but I just want to recap three very simple points. For me, this is commendable. It is really not embarrassing. It is commendable. A lot of thought process have gone into it, and a lot of detail has been put into this motion. So I commend the mover of the motion. Point number two, I think most of us, or practically all of us, support in principle the amalgamation. And I think that's the good part about it, that we are agreeable on the concept of amalgamation. Now, the third thing for me is the process that I was talking about. And if I go back, and I stand corrected in here, that the state government, in their wisdom or otherwise, decided not to force amalgamations. That's my understanding. And therefore, because there were no forced amalgamation, the concept of voluntary amalgamation came into play. And therefore, we have a voluntary amalgamation between, say, for example, Glenorchy and Hobart City Council. Now, when we talk about voluntary amalgamation, we've got to ask the other party as well. I mean, we are quite happy to have this amalgamation, but is the other party interested as well? Will they also volunteer to come with us on this journey to amalgamate? And I think that is an important point. And I think Councillor Lohberger asked a very significant question, and that clarified that we need to have this evidence, as it were, and the fact that we will have this evidence that we will be able to take and then have the elector poll, that will then be quite comfortable for me. So therefore, on that basis, as I've said, and I also would have supported the first motion, and I said I would support it in principle. The process was lacking, and therefore I will support this. Thank you.
Further discussion? Yeah, I just wanted to make a couple of points. Just on the future of local government report, I just wanted to clarify that you know, that was a good piece of work. There was some really good background papers as well, but it was much more about the sector. And I think in terms of some of the challenges with the sector, I don't think really the challenges are those as much with the sort of wealthiest and council out of 29 with 10% of the population. I think, you know, many of the challenges are with the much smaller councils, and probably amalgamation is more of an existential issue for them than the City of Hobart. I mean, I don't know yet whether I support amalgamation, not because I don't like the idea of a bigger city to do more things, but I have to be persuaded that of the cost, that we're going to get some support from the state government. You know, how much is this going to disrupt our, you know, quite significant work to actually achieve results for the community today and for the next few years? I really do worry about amalgamations distracting everybody. All the strategies will have to, all the policies will have to be rewritten. I just worry that is it all that it's cracked up to be, I guess, is my concern. So I think it is important to have the information that's set out in this motion. I need that reassurance, and I'm sure the people of our communities need that information before they make a decision. And any amalgamation is only going to work if the community are behind it, and it is their government. Of course it needs to be the people's decision, but they need good information. And I need that reassurance and the investigation before I could make a decision. The previous motion asked me to start an amalgamation and give in principle support for it without any evidence, and I really would like to see more of that. So yeah, I think this is a good piece of work. And I just also want to flag that I did actually give evidence to the Future of Local Government Committee on behalf of the Council on our submission, and I think my comments in that meeting may have led to them saying, you know, there might be an openness to Hobart amalgamating with Glenorchy, because I didn't close down and say no, we're opposed to it. I just sort of left it open, and I think the committee sort of grabbed onto that, but it wasn't because they had recommended it. It was really because I sort of said, well, you know, we're probably open to it, but it wasn't through any detailed analysis that they had done to sort of recommend it. So I think I just wanted to sort of provide that background for people so they understood where some of that came from. So yeah, I think this gives us something to go with. I actually do think that we're all kind of in furious agreement, and I think those members who are supportive of taking the next steps with amalgamation should consider supporting this motion, because this is the one in front of us and it does effectively most of the things that everybody has been looking at. Okay, Councillor Kitsos, did you want to sum up at all?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Just prior to moving into my summing up, I think from the comments around the table, it would be helpful to clarify in that sentence at point 2 that if Glenorchy Council commits to the above, then prior to the elector poll, the following work will take place. Just to provide some clarification around the table for elected members who weren't sure on the process there. I also wanted...
So sorry, that would just be a drafting, but are you happy with that to go in? That would be Councillor Dutta as the seconder.
So if Glenorchy Council commits to the above, then prior to the elector poll.
Point of order, Lord Mayor. Is that not an amendment? And move the amendment, so can't move a motion, can't amend it?
Debated it. You can only move. It has to be done before. Summing up now, Lord Mayor. It's too late.
Yeah, okay.
And the mover can't amend my motion.
It's too late. It's summing up.
I think probably it can be just taken on notice by the elected members as clarification. Yep.
Sure, I'll provide that clarification. That point 2 is to occur after Glenorchy commits to an elector poll, but prior to the elector poll being undertaken, so that we do in fact have the evidence from what we need to know to give to our ratepayers to make an informed choice when they vote, which is really key to then being able to respect their vote. I also want to address the local government review. I trust that this will be cited as a source in the report that is then provided back to us. And I want to also acknowledge that I can't actually split this motion, or it wouldn't make sense, because they're intrinsically linked. And I'd also like to just address the cost, that if an elector poll goes out with the local government ballot papers, then it's at no to negligible cost for the council as well. So it is quite a financially prudent motion as well. So I hope after the debate tonight you can see that we are all on the same page in a lot of the content of this motion tonight. Really, it's asking to do the background research, to engage with Glenorchy and to find out what our ratepayers think of an amalgamation. Thank you.
Okay, I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no.
No.
Show of hands, all those in favour.
Favour. Councillor Dutta, Councillor Passelt, Councillor Kitsos, Councillor Lohberger, Alderman Bloomfield, Councillor Kelly, Councillor Harvey and...
No, not Kelly.
Sorry, Kelly. And Mayor?
And against?
Alderman Zuko, Councillor Elliott, Councillor Coates, Councillor Kelly.
That's carried. We'll move on now to item 21, which is a question on notice, which has been received and noted. Would someone like to move that? Moved by Councillor Passelt, seconded by... No, I need a seconder first.
Sorry. Just a question. There was some email this afternoon that will be added to the...
Correct. It was brought to my attention after we published the agenda that there's at least two trips that are not reflected in the answer that's on the agenda, so we'll amend that to reflect the memo we circulated out of session. It looks like it was an administrative error at the time.
Okay, all those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no. Carried unanimously. Are there any questions without notice from the floor? Councillor Kelly, Councillor Elliott, sorry.
Thank you. Just a question, please. Which trips were missed off the list in item 21?
We'll take that on. This is about trips that I've taken, and I think one of them that is on Wes's list may not have been for the purpose, the main purpose that was, yeah.
So you've been told you're taking it on notice, Mr Young? Okay.
Well, it's a suggestion.
Right. Interesting. Thank you. Does the council have a policy on air travel, not in addition to the elected member development and support policy?
No, we don't.
Okay, thank you. How in the complete list, when we have it under item number 21, how many staff attended those events or other events which are solely or predominantly for the reason of saving the climate, flu for saving the climate? And what's been the cost? And obviously you take that on notice. Thank you. So how many staff? Those events and any other events, interstate or international? And finally, have officers considered putting up signage at the South Hobart Oval around beware of the dog and dogs attacks happen in this area?
No, we're obviously working through the feedback and the submissions around the dog management plan, so we'll come to council next workshop. So there hasn't been any consideration of additional signage at this point.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Councillor Kitsos?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. My question is, can we please test for fluorophenocal, the antibiotic that's been dumped to deal with the salmon outbreak at our swimming beaches over summer, and can we make this information public, please?
Further questions? There being none, we can move on to our closed agenda. If someone would like to move a motion into the closed. Moved by Councillor Lohberger, seconded by Councillor Kitsos. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no. Carried unanimously.